Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a story from the book of Acts that, honestly, it reads like a high-stakes thriller. It's all about a crisis of faith, a single idea so dangerous it really threatened to tear the early Christian church apart before it even really got off the ground.
So at the very heart of this whole conflict were two totally different ways of looking at salvation. On one side, you have the idea that it's a completely free gift, something you get just through faith. And on the other side, the idea that, well, yeah, it's a gift, but there's a catch. There's a human requirement you have to fulfill. And that one little addition, that tiny little plus sign, was about to cause a massive spiritual explosion.
Now, to really get what's happening here, we have to go to the city of Antioch. This place was one of the most exciting, most dynamic spots in the entire early church.
Just picture this place for a second. It was vibrant, it was totally multicultural, and you know what? It was working. You had Jewish followers of Jesus and non-Jewish or Gentile followers all worshiping together, totally united. I mean, it was the perfect picture of the Great Commission in action. It showed this was a faith for all people, breaking down all the old barriers. But that harmony, it was about to get shattered. And then some men show up from Judea with this message. And just listen to how final that sounds. You cannot be saved. Whoa. This wasn't a suggestion, right? It was laid out like a non-negotiable rule. They were basically telling all the Gentile believers, hey, your faith in Jesus, it's not enough. You have to become Jewish first if you want to be truly saved.
Let's just be really clear about what this was. This was heresy, plain and simple. It was a direct attack on the very core of the gospel. By adding this requirement of circumcision, it was saying that what Christ did on the cross, well, it wasn't quite sufficient. It turned this incredible, free gift of grace into something that you had to earn, at least partly, by doing a human ritual.
The reaction to this new teaching was, as you can imagine, immediate, and it was intense. The leaders there in Antioch, Paul and Barnabas, they knew exactly how dangerous this was, and they did not hold back one bit.
The Bible actually says this brought them into sharp dispute and debate. Now, this wasn't some quiet, polite little chat over coffee. We're talking about a fierce, public defense of the truth. Paul and Barnabas knew that if this false teaching started to take root, it would poison the whole church, so they confronted it head on.
And their conviction, their reason for fighting so hard, was rooted in this foundational truth, a message Paul would later write down so clearly. Salvation is a gift, period. It's not from us. It's not based on how well we perform or follow the rules. It is 100% from God, and we receive it through faith. And why? So that no one can boast about their own efforts. That was the principle they were fighting for.
You know, this is such a critical thing to remember. Sometimes the biggest threats to the faith don't come from the outside world. They come from well-meaning people on the inside who just get it wrong. And Paul and Barnabas' stand here, it became a powerful model for how to protect the very heart of the gospel.
So this conflict, it quickly grew way beyond a local argument in one city. The very future of Christianity itself was now on trial. The stakes just could not have been any higher.
And you might be asking, okay, but why? Why was this one ritual, this one little add-on, such a huge deal? Why would they risk splitting the whole church over it?
Well, because everything was at risk. The global mission of the church would be totally crippled. The purity of the gospel message would be corrupted, turning good news into just another heavy burden. The very idea that Christ's sacrifice was enough was being questioned. And, on a really practical level, it would have created a two-tiered church, permanently splitting Jewish and Gentile believers.
Let me put it bluntly. If the people pushing this idea had won, the Christian faith might never have become a global movement. It could have just stayed a small, exclusive little sect of Judaism, basically closed off to the rest of the world. The entire mission would have been stopped right in its tracks.
So, facing this massive crisis, the church in Antioch made a really wise, really strategic decision. They realized they couldn't solve this thing on their own. They needed to find a unified solution for the entire church.
So they took decisive action. They put together a delegation, led by Paul and Barnabas, to go to Jerusalem. What was the goal? To talk it over with the original apostles and the elders of the mother church. Now,
This wasn't about giving up or backing down. It was a really humble and smart move to try and preserve both truth and unity. And here we see this amazing contrast. While this debate was causing all this division back in Antioch, something incredible was happening on the road to Jerusalem. As Paul and Barnabas traveled, they shared stories of how non-Jews were coming to faith, and this news brought great joy everywhere they went. It's such a powerful reminder. The true gospel unites people, while heresy just divides.
But, of course, the second they arrived in Jerusalem, the conflict flared right back up. Some of the believers there, who came from a very strict Pharisee background, they stood up and repeated the exact same demand. Gentiles have to be circumcised and they have to keep the law. The battle lines were drawn. The stage was set for the historic Jerusalem Council.
So why are we talking about a 2,000-year-old theological fight? Because the core issue at the heart of this crisis, it's absolutely timeless. It is just as relevant today as it was back then.
See, the temptation to add just one more thing to the simple gospel of grace, it's always with us. That urge to say, yeah, faith in Jesus is essential, but you also need to do this, or look like this, or belong to this particular group to really be saved.
So it makes you think, right? What are the add-ons that we face today? It could be anything. Cultural expectations, political loyalties, personal rules or traditions that we start to elevate to the same level as the gospel itself, and in the process, we water down the pure message of grace. So the story of Acts 15 basically gives us a powerful playbook for today. We learn that we have to defend grace fiercely, just like Paul and Barnabas did. We're reminded not to try and go it alone in big disputes, but to seek out wise counsel. We see how important it is to focus on the good news, what God is doing, as the antidote to all the division. And finally, we learn to prioritize a unity that's built on the solid foundation of truth. Ultimately, grace is a free gift, but it is not a cheap one. It costs God everything. And the battle to keep that gift free, to protect it from our own human tendency to add conditions and requirements, well, that battle is never truly over. It's a battle every single generation of believers has to be ready to fight.